What's a car that a businessman like Harvey Specter and some gangsters like the Sopranos can both agree on? The LS 460, and this one beside me is the F-Sport package. Now, today's video is a little bit special to me because this is one of my personal cars, and there is a little bit of history behind how I ended up with this car, and I'll even tell you later in the video why this car was a big reason for me coming to Lexus in the first place. But before I get into that, make sure you hit like and subscribe for more Lexus-related content. Now, in my last video, I challenged the viewers to find me on Instagram and comment RX350 on one of my photos. I got a lot of entries, and today I pulled the name of Nishia Quash. And Nishia is gonna be sent this little Lexus gift. But don't worry, if you enter the contest, I'm gonna keep your name in the hat that I have. As well, after today's video, if you comment on one of my photos saying LS 460, I'll enter you in for the next prize. So before I start showing you the car and going over some of the quirks and lovely things about it, I should mention why I chose this car, because when this car was traded into our dealership, I just bought my house and it was like the wrong time financially for me to be making any purchases. But for my whole life, not my whole life, for my whole dealership life, and even a little bit before then, I always wanted an LS 460. Ever since seeing it in Suits when Harvey Specter was driven around in it. I know he was driven around in a couple different cars, but the LS 460 always stuck out to me, especially the sport package. And I always told myself that when the right one came along, I would jump on it, no matter what. And the right one had to be a few things. It had to be black, because I'm a black car guy. You might know that from some of my other videos. It had to be the 2014, or maybe 15, or maybe 16 model, one of those 3 years. It had to be the F-Sport package. And it had to be one that needed a little bit of love. And that's what I'll go over a little bit today in this video, is that this one does need a little bit of love still. There's some quirks and a little bit of blemishes and stuff like that. And the reason I wanted one like that was so that I could slowly fix it up over time and, you know, not be so afraid if it's like a perfect car, even though I don't drive it a whole lot. So let's get into the front end. So because of being the F-Sport package, we have that first iteration of the spindle grille. And the spindle grille has changed a few times over the years. This is the one that goes vertically. And it is trimmed off by this chrome F-Sport shaped grille, I guess you could say, or bumper, with that reinforcement piece in the middle. In some of the newer cars, we see that behind the grille. And on there, we have our parking sensors. Now, while I'm sort of kneeling down beside the front end, you'll notice the license plate says VIP LSF. And there's a little bit of story of that as well. No, it doesn't mean that I'm a VIP, a very important person, or a very individual person. It actually is a little bit of a homage to that Japanese car culture of VIP cars, which is like those big sedans with big wheels, lower to the ground, et cetera, et cetera. And the reason I got this license plate was my friend Ahmed picked up a 2004 LS, and he did the license plate VIP LS, and he slammed it and put big wheels on it. So I didn't tell him I bought this car, and instead I got the same custom plate with the F at the end for F-Sport, because that's what mine is, and I pulled up to his business and parked it beside him for him to see. And obviously, like any good friend, his reaction was massive, and it was a really fun way to sort of celebrate both of our loves for the Lexus LS. Now, below the license plate, we see some of those blemishes start to unfold. You'll see the chrome does have this little crack in the middle, right where your eyes would go when you look at that front bumper. I am getting around to fixing that. I haven't yet, but it is on my list of things to do. I was just gonna wrap it in chrome at first, but I'm gonna replace sort of that whole chrome piece. The rest of the bumper, I did actually paint and refinish this bumper, because I always find when picking up a used car, that front bumper is such an important part of the face that if you can just pay a couple $100 and get it all refinished and painted, it makes the car look brand new. That's a little insider trick. One of my staff members, Bilal, taught me that whenever he picks up a used car, he always gets the front bumper painted. And I'm very, very grateful that he taught me that, because it does make a huge difference. With this bumper, we have actual active air intakes here, or air ventilation. And these massive holes really suck in that air for the big brakes that I'm going to talk about in a second for cooling and for the tires and the brakes. Then we have a little bit more of the continuation of that front F-Sport grille, as well as an LED fog light that works really, really well. Above that, we have just this little section here where there is a headlight washer. I know I saw in the comments the other day, not everybody loves the headlight washers, but I think they're pretty cool. And then we have the daytime running light for like the Lexus signature daytime running light with dual adaptive LED headlights. So they move up, down, and left, right slightly. And then you'll actually see in the sort of like combination lamp there, we have a little cluster of LEDs for the signals. And those are so bright that if I'm ever at like a stoplight and I have my signal on, you can see all the signs around me light up amber as it's blinking because of how bright they are. And I did notice Lexus changed this in the newer models, so only a few years have that bright of daytime running light. There is another little blemish here that's slowly becoming a little bit of an issue, is I'm getting a little bit of fogging on this headlight lens. I recently just changed the headlights on another older car I have that maybe I'll talk about in another video. It's a very JDM legend car. And it changed the whole front end for me as well, just like the bumper did. So maybe I'll get a new lens or get these refinished soon because it definitely is becoming a little bit aged. Now, let's talk a little bit about the rest of the styling of the front end. So we have this big, massive hood that the F-Sport does really complement these body lines. So we have a little bit of a ramp divot here that sort of protrudes to the back. And then the hood itself, I know black, you can't really see it, but it has a little bit of body lines, both sort of in the middle and then along that seam there. In the silvers and the whites, you might see a little bit more. The black hides it a little bit. And the hood needs a little bit of a refinishing, but interesting enough, you'll see this fender actually sort of takes up a lot of the front end. The hood starts actually right here. So when you think about it, the hood starts past the headlight and then it protrudes backwards like that. So this fender is very massive and it takes up a lot of that front fascia look. Okay, so let me show you under the hood because that's a big reason for anybody to buy this car. So under the hood, we have the 4.6 liter V8. This is one of the smoothest engines Lexus has ever come up with. It's not the loudest engine, but it is very smooth and still very powerful, and it does have the 8-speed transmission, which back then was like a first, and it was mostly in like things like the F-Sports and stuff like that that you saw that. So under here, most of it is all covered over in plastic, except you can see I'm missing a piece right here. I still have it at home, but I had to jumpstart this car after it was sitting for most of the winter, and I just never put it back on. So that actually gives you a little bit of a peek underneath, and it even gives you a little hint of an accessory I might have added to the car that I'll talk about later. But other than that, it's all sort of covered in this plastic. I always thought that it's funny that this little plastic bit here looks like abs, like it looks like a 6-pack or like an 8-pack for some reason. I'm sure there's a reason for it, but and then we have the intake sort of at the bottom here, where it splits off into both sides of the V8. And your washer fluid sort of just off to the bottom right there. But like I said, most of that is just that engine and a huge, huge reason for buying this car. Also, you can see the hood shape when I really open it, how it's kind of got like that V to it. Let me show you to the side of the vehicle and one of my first custom mods that I did, even though it's more like an OEM Plus mod. And that is these 21-inch wheels. And I don't know if you've guessed what they're from yet, but it is the LC500. And when I first got these, one of the technicians, Tyler, who worked here at the time, noticed that we had a set of these around the dealership, and he was sort of comparing and noticed they would fit the LS460 that I had. So he begged me to just try it, like just put it on the hoist, throw them on and see what it looked like. And never in a million years did I expect them to look so good with this car. I don't know if it's the black matching the black and the chrome matching the chrome, but it almost looks like this car should have came this way from the factory. But instead, I have it as like an OEM Plus upgrade. So these are the 21-inch wheels from the LC500. I think it's the pre-2023 or 2024 LC500, either the convertible or that performance package. And on them are the Pilot Super Sports. Now the tire itself is a little overkill for the driving I do. And yes, these 21-inch wheels did take away a little bit from that soft ride that the factory wheels had. And I did really like the factory F-Sport wheels, but I do like these a little bit more. It just gives it that little bit more gangster look, I guess you could say. Behind those wheels, we have a jumbo brake kit. I actually thought for many years that it was a Brembo brake kit. I thought that was branded somewhere, but I can't seem to find it today while prepping for this video. But we do have this massive, I think 6-piston caliper and these huge ventilated front brakes. Now, the brakes themselves are very grabby, I find. So even though this is a very heavy car, whenever I touch the brakes on this LS, even with the bigger wheels, or before the bigger wheels, you can really feel it grab. It doesn't really slip much because it's more of that aggressive sport brake. And in fact, anytime one of my friends drives this car and I'm in the passenger seat, whenever they touch the brakes, you can feel us kind of like jerk forward. And it's good because those brakes do require a lot of cooling. Now, since they are so big, it does mean I'm constantly cleaning these wheels because it just gets caked in brake dust. And soon I'm gonna have to change those brake, I think pads and rotors I have to do soon. Even with like my discounted rate from working at a dealership, it's gonna be thousands of dollars per side for me to deal with. So I've been really postponing that because I only drive this car like 5,000 kilometers a year or something like that. But anyway, that is the first sort of custom that I did to the car. Looking at the rest of the side profile, so we do have the F Sport logo. It is the F with the white background and Sport underneath. And then we sort of have this chrome protruding from the side. As I mentioned, I wasn't sure about the chrome accents at first, but they've really grown on me, especially once I tinted these windows to the legal amount in my place of living. Now, if you can tint where you live, this is definitely a sedan that looks really cool when all tinted out. And the chrome really ties in those wheels that I put on. So we have chrome around the windows, we have chrome door handles, as well as sort of this chrome kit at the bottom. And below that is part of that F Sport body kit, I guess you could say. And I have met a guest of mine here. Actually, I met him on Instagram and then in the dealership where he had the, I think it's not the Artisan Spirits kit, but maybe the Tom's Racing kit or something like that on his LS, and it looked really sharp. So that was really cool. I do have the chrome at the bottom, as I mentioned, but another feature about the side profile is this. So when I open the door and I go to close it, we have soft close. I know that's such a small thing, and people in the comments are gonna be like, oh, like all of my base model blah blah blahs have soft close. At Lexus, we don't have it in anything usually except our flagship models. So to have that is really cool. And again, my friends, whenever they get in my car, they know that it's a cool feature. And they're like, well, if you paid for the soft close doors, you have to use the soft close doors. So anytime they go to leave my car, they slowly just like press it up and then just let that soft close suck it in. It's not like the soft close in your kitchen where you can just like slam the door and it like slows it down. It's the opposite. You have to like let it do the work. And that brings me to, you know, a little Amazon mod I did. And that is, I did put, you can't see it on the shiny floors we have here, but I did get one of those Lexus puddle lamps. So it sort of just goes into the bottom of the door panel here, and then it gives you that Lexus readout on the pavement. And that was like $20 on Amazon. Sometimes I really like it, and sometimes I'm like, it looks like it's from Amazon. So to each their own, I guess you could say there. As we get to the back of the car, you can see even that back door is equally as big as the front, if not bigger. Probably on the long wheelbase version, it is bigger. And even when you're not doing the soft close door, it's a solid door. Like, it just sounds perfect. Okay, let's look at the back of the LS. So the first thing is the taillights, and these remind me of sort of the afterburner that we see on things like the LC or even the new LS, but there is a big three-dimensional in this combination lamp. I don't know if you can tell from where you're sitting, if you're watching it on your TV or your phone, but these are very three-dimensional. You can see they're sort of like pieces of plastic or glass that are getting light from deeper in the taillight and then sort of like projecting it out or curving with it, sort of like a fiber optic, I guess. And it has that Lexus sort of emblem shape. And even as you get up close to them, you can see little textured dots on one angle of them, and then it's frosted on the other. So in traffic, behind one of these, it does look really, really nice. We do have the LS 460. Mine is the all-wheel drive, so we see the all-wheel drive down at the bottom. I do have a big dent here that I gotta take care of. And we have some chrome sort of tying in all that chrome we saw on the side and the Lexus emblem at the top. Towards the bottom of the bumper, we have some more chrome on the dual exhaust. I almost said quad exhaust, but it is dual. And a rear diffuser in the middle, all part of the Sport package. Same thing, I have heard an aftermarket exhaust on these and it sounds very nice. So maybe one day I'll do that. But let's look in the trunk. It is a power trunk, so we're gonna just press that button, power open and power close, or you can just manually open and close it. It doesn't really fight you on it. And you'll see a mod that I did. Now, in my younger years, I was super into audio systems and big subwoofers and stuff like that. But for many years, I got out of that. But this car just seemed to suit that loud bass, gangster rap type vibe to it. So I got these Infinity speakers installed from Mark at Connect Audio Video, who I used to work with when I did that sort of thing. He hooked it up, and I was super happy to have a little bit of bass. And the car is so tight inside that even with a lot of power out here, I don't hear any rattles in the inside. And that part of that is the Mark Levinson sound system. And integrating into that was a little tricky. In fact, Mark's been doing this like my whole life, and he told me that this is one of the hardest cars for him to work on, to be able to like run wires and stuff, because it's built so well that even running a power wire from under the hood to the trunk was like hours and hours and hours for him. Also back here, I bought this from work. This is a Water Demon drying cloth. And it is really good for a black car. I'm not sponsored by Water Demon, although I should be. So Water Demon, if you read this, let me know. But we do use this in our detail department. It's kind of like the new version of using a chamois. It's like an absorbing cloth. It's really good for black cars because it doesn't scratch the paint. This one I've had maybe for a year, and it's held up well. You have to keep it wet or moist. So I keep it in this little container, but I do use it, and it's amazing how much this makes your life easier when you have a black car. So I have that back here, as well as the medic kit and the manuals. I just kind of keep off to the side. But because the subwoofers take up that part of the trunk, I mainly only just use this for small things. I don't even really put groceries back there. But there has been times I went snowboarding and I was able to put snowboards back there because the trunk is so big. Other than that, we'll just close that and move on to the rest of the car. Okay, so inside the LS, let me just shut that and you can hear that thump. Let me go over a bunch of things here because the interior on the LS is very nice and it's hard to describe how nice it is on a video. So one is that thump that you just heard, me shutting the door, and on the door it is very heavy and there is a lot of nice materials. Everything from the soft touch leather to the little bit of aluminum, even where the seat controls are placed are very easy to get to and quick. And we even have that extra button to raise and lower the top of your 3-point harness, which is really nice. And then we just have a blacked out bezel here for the window controls, some hand stitched leather, sort of, you know, outlining this whatever panel, I guess you could say here. A little bit of space on the map pockets, but nothing really to write home about. The rest of the dashboard, so we have some really nice black and silver accents to each other, and it's like a little bit of modern artwork that sort of goes from one side to the other. It's almost like the F-Sport grille if you look really close at it, the vertical squiggly lines. And it kind of goes with, again, that silver or chrome and black vibe of the car. It does still have the Lexus clock, and this one is a GPS corrected clock. Now, I will say I'm having an issue with it, and I don't know what it is. I haven't even asked the mechanics about it yet, but this one is having trouble keeping time. I don't know if it's the GPS aspect of it. I don't know if it's just me not having the settings right, but it does tell the wrong time right now, so I always have to use my watch. Also, I got this cute little air freshener from the Lexus boutique. It's kind of discolored a little bit, but it does have refills. This one's like a cologne scent, so it keeps your car smelling nice. There's also like new car scent and some fruity smells and stuff like that. Let's start in the center console. So I'm not gonna really open up the armrest and show you what's in there because it's all like microfiber cloths and sunglasses and stuff, but the way it opens is it sort of just slides back. There's a quick little peek. In one motion, really easy to get at, really solid. It's held up really well. There's a couple shiny spots on the leather, but I do condition the leather once in a while. So it hasn't really worn through like I see on a lot of other cars of the same age and mileage. There is some stitching here as well on that sort of forward-facing vertical panel. And I always find the armrest is in a really good space for me. So like when I'm sitting here, I can kind of just rest on that armrest and rest the rest of my hand on the Lexus remote here. But before I get to the Lexus remote, let's talk about the seat controls. So on this particular one, we have heated and cooled seats in the front, and it's the dial setting one. So what you do is you actually just press on the little button and that'll pop up the dial. And if you go over to the left, it's gonna be cooling and you'll hear those fans working. And when you go over to the right, it's gonna be heated, and obviously it's variable as well. And then when you wanna get it out of your way, you just press back down on it. So for me, I pretty much keep my seat on cool for the whole summer and heat for the whole winter. Definitely the cool setting isn't as cooling as it once was. I don't know if the perforation leather just have a little bit of clogs in it. I don't know if the fan's wearing out, but I will say that. Not to complain, but it isn't as cool as like the new cars that I get into. We also have the rear curtain button here. So that rear windshield, a curtain will come up and down when you press that button. And then we have our drive mode settings. So because this LS has the air ride, we have a button for height. So what you can do is actually raise the car so that when you get in and out of it, you're higher off the ground. This is a really good feature for any of my older guests that, you know, for one, have the money for an LS, but also don't want an SUV, even though the height of an SUV is easier for them to get in and out. So what they do is they press that height high button, and then when they park the car, the air ride goes up. And then when they get in it, or sorry, when they start driving, it goes down, and vice versa. Then when they park, it goes up again. So that is a really cool feature. It does do it a little bit. Now you can trick it. So you can get a module, I'm probably not supposed to be saying this because I'm a Lexus dealer, that can trick the car into lowering it. Now that would void your warranty. I can't condone that type of behavior, but my friend Ahmed did do it to his LS and it's lower, and I think he's had some issues, but it was like a cheap trick that he did. Then we have traction control off, and we have a snow mode, and the snow mode can be combined with, we have comfort to the left, and when it's in comfort, you'll see comfort pop up on the dash. We have eco, which is if you do the left again. So going to the left will cycle between comfort and eco. Then we have, if we push down on the dial, that gives us normal mode. And again, we'll see things change to show that it's in normal mode. Then when we go to the right once, it goes sport, and you'll get a little animation of the engine and transmission on the big screen that you have. And if we go over to the right again, it does sport plus. And now it's the same animation, but it shows the suspension and the steering now on that little animation. And this one has a special electronic assisted steering that's variable gear ratio. So when you put it in Sport Plus, it really does tighten up the amount of input needed to get a greater output from the steering controls. And this was a really cool setting for me, and this whole control panel, because the first summer I had this car, I took it up to Muskoka for a solo road trip, and I could be comfortable on bumpy roads. But then when I got into like a windy, smooth road, I put it in Sport Plus, and this was one of the best handling heavy cars I've ever driven. And it made me really justify the purchase because I was able to like have fun on these windy, hilly roads, and it didn't feel like a giant sedan that I was driving. So do keep that in mind when you go to buy one of these. Then we have the Lexus remote here, and some people love it, some people hated it. I think back in 2014, or 2012, whenever it came out. This was a really cool way of being able to control this screen up here without getting fingerprints on it. And because of that, the screen was able to be recessed into the dashboard, and that helped with like things like sun glare and stuff like that. So the remote itself is leather wrapped. We have some stitching, and then we have this little floating piece here. And I remember the first time I felt this floating piece and I hovered over an icon, and you can feel it in the mouse. So you feel that little bit of force feedback. And it makes it from being like a free range mouse to like having notches in it. First time I felt that, I thought it was the coolest thing I've ever experienced in my entire life. Now I'm back to liking touchscreens, but for the most part, I barely use it because the car is set up the way I want it to. So really the only time I have to use that is if I'm like putting in an address or something like that. But it still held up well. I know some people hate it. I don't mind it. Then we have menu and map. So the map will always just default it to the maps screen. It doesn't matter if you're in settings, it doesn't matter if you're in like the main screen, map will put you back there. Speaking of physical buttons, we also have some physical radio, media, pass track, all those things, pause. And those are some quick little shortcuts so that if I wanted to just pop over to radio, I hit radio, pop over to media, just like that map setting did, and you can do that. And we have some really high quality knobs on either side. So we have the volume knob, which is metal, and it's like a brushed aluminum, and the tune one. I always forget the tune one is there. But we have the volume knob and then our climate control. Now this LS has climate concierge. So what you should be able to do is just hit, your temperature, 21 degrees Celsius, let's say, and the car will do the thinking for you. So it'll, put it on fresh air or recirc and change where it's flowing. And back when this first came out, it was one of the best systems out there for HVAC in a car. It's gotten a lot better, even in the new LSs with like lasers that get your body temperature and stuff like that. But back in the day, this worked quite well. For whatever the reason, I have it set up that it sort of defaults to like 25 all the time when I turn on the car, but I always just go ahead and change it. And then we have our 4-way button, which also lights up. Above that, we have that illuminated clock that I mentioned about earlier, and then that big screen up there that you can use split screen. You can see things like your climate control, some fuel economy stats, etc. Like right now it's saying I'm averaging 12.2 liters per 100 kilometer, and I can see all that from the setting. And there is some advanced settings that I would recommend checking out. Things like vehicle customization, where you can, you know, customize things like your lights and your door locks and your climate settings, as well as how many signals your car flashes when you do like the soft signal change, and also the driver easy exit, which I always recommend as well. That's pretty much it for the center. On the dashboard itself, so we have trip and reset on one side, we have the dimmer and the headlight washer on the other, and then we can just change what we see from hitting the display. So things like fuel economy, average fuel economy, range, elapsed time, average speed, etc. Right now, I have just over half a tank. It's saying I could go about 368 kilometers because the tank is quite big. Everything else on there is pretty much analog, including the speedometer. On the steering wheel, we have the classic cruise control switch. We have answer and hang up. We have some paddle shifters. The paddle shifters are pretty good. Not quite as quick as like an ISF, but they still do the trick for when you want to be able to tell the car what gear to be in. Because it's an 8-speed, you don't want it to be like searching around and stuff. Then we have our volume and radio controls to the left, and our brake hold is right on the steering wheel. So that's kind of a nice feature to give your leg a little break. You can just hit brake hold. This car does have the electronic parking brake. It's sort of just like down here. I always just leave it in auto. And I always leave my mirrors to auto as well, so that when I lock it, they fold in. On the left, I have my blind spot and parking sensors, my heated steering wheel, and then there's like a little change holder, which I have a little bit of American money in there for when I cross the border. But that's pretty much everything on the dash. Some of the things you can't see from this angle is it is an Alcantara roof liner. The roof liner is like an ultra suede Alcantara, which is pretty rare in the Lexus world. I mean, now we're seeing it in some cars, but that is a really nice touch once you notice it, even on these B pillars here. And I think that really helps with keeping the cabin so quiet, because it really is a quiet cabin. We have a sunglass holder right below the light, which I have some old sunglasses in. And we have on the headrests of both F-Sport seats, we have the F-Sport logo really embroidered in there, which is nice. And also you'll notice this passenger seat, I can move without any hands. I can move it by these little controls here. So the driver can move that passenger seat, but also the passenger in the back can move that passenger seat as well. As for the driver's seat, my favorite feature of it is the thigh extension. The extension does protrude out quite a bit, which is great for long drives. I really like that being a tall guy. It's probably one of the best I've ever felt for how far it comes out. All we just have is your typical, you know, I think it's like a 4-way lumbar. You can raise and lower the headrest sort of by the power on the side. Oh, another little touch that Lexus put in here is this holy crap handle is padded leather and perforated leather, so it matches the rest of the interior. So don't forget, this is a flagship, so even those little details do matter. Normal vanity mirror, nothing too exciting there. So let's move to the back seat. Okay, so let's check out the back seat of the LS, because sometimes owners of LSs actually sit in the back seat. So the S4 doesn't have a ton of amenities, but since it's really dark back here, let me just turn on my little vanity light here so you can see me a little bit better. And the vanity mirror on the LS for the back passengers was designed so that that celebrity getting out of it can quickly check to make sure their face is in order before they ultimately get out and see the paparazzi. And that's on both sides. It is like a very big mirror and has that little light. The door panel itself does have, believe it or not, a what looks like cigarette ashtray. It says no cigarettes. So I think it's just maybe a change purse, but it's deep and you actually can't remove it. So it definitely would not be a good idea to have ashes in there. We don't have any curtains on here because it's the F-Sport, but we do have the auto up and down feature and just some aluminum. And like I said, it's a big door. It is really dark back here because I have the curtain up and I have tints, like really dark tints. I usually just leave this part down. So on this armrest that comes down in the F-Sport, I can raise and lower the curtain, which is really nice, so I can press that. I also have heated seats on both sides, and I can set those to auto, or I can control them by 1, 2, and 3. I have a little bit of a console here, console, I guess I should say. And this piece itself is really big and pops out some cup holders just like magic. When you have that open, it's very executive-like back here. And in fact, I can even adjust my headrest to be even more executive. It almost makes it like a pillow, which is quite nice. Then we have a pass-through that opens up into the trunk. Nothing too crazy there. It just calls it a trunk storage extension. I like it because it gives me more bass from my subwoofers. And you can even fold up the center headrest, which I didn't know actually did that until right now. But I've driven around back here with my friends driving, and it's pretty sweet. I'm not gonna lie. For being a sedan, like if I had to be driven around, it's gonna be in an LS, because I don't think you can get car sick in an LS. Like, it's just so comfortable, it's big, it's luxurious, and especially for this other passenger, like to being able to move that front seat up gives you just a mile of space back here. And it's hard to believe that probably who enjoys it back here the most is my dog. This is a big reason why I have this car, is I put a little towel down, and my big golden doodle is who hangs out here the most back here. In fact, now when I take him in other cars, he sometimes cries because this one is so smooth. We also have some vents in the center, as well as a little plug. It's like a 12 volt, 120 watt cigarette lighter style plug. We also have some vents on the B pillars, which is quite nice. We can add some spotlights here. And it's funny that those are LED. So the two spotlights on either side are LED. I don't know if someone has changed that before, because almost everything else in this car is sort of that yellow halogen style look. I don't know if there's a reason for that. Okay, so in closing, my LS460 is one of my favorite cars that I have. I am averaging 11.7 liters per 100. I just checked, and from the factory, it says I should be doing 11.4. So that's pretty good considering I put some big beefy wheels on it. And the fact that I sort of use this car as like, I don't know, more utility and luxury. Like, me and my friends will take it out if we're going out for the night. It's really cool to mob around in. But I've also had surfboards strapped to the top for the first couple years. And it was sort of like my surfboard car, because even the previous owner lived on the beach, so there was a lot of sand and stuff like that in the HVAC system. So I'm still always finding sand, so I'm not afraid to like use it a little bit. It's not like a garage queen all the time. And because of that 360 horsepower V8, it is a very smooth power plant. It's a very heavy car, especially with that air ride, to give it that nice soft ride. And it is one of my favorite cars still in the lineup. Even getting in and out of it today, you can smell that leather. And I'm so used to like a new car smell, but this one you can really smell that genuine leather. And I still get so excited about this car whenever I talk about it, whenever I drive it. It reminds me of Suits. I've nicknamed it Rachel from Suits, because of, I don't know, sometimes I just name my cars. Maintenance-wise, it's been pretty good. I do have the brakes coming up. I have to do that. My Lexus service department has been reminding me of that. These tires are probably gonna wear out soon as well. I have the winters, which kind of split up the mileage. And I gotta do a little bit of paint work, a little bit of chrome work, just to get it sort of up to the perfection standards. But this is probably a car I'm going to keep for as long as possible anyway. Anyway, let me know what you think about this video in the comments below. If you wanna see some of my other cars and vehicles and toys, let me know. I'd be happy to do a little bit of a walk around on those and tell the story as to why I purchased them. Sometimes working at a car dealership is like, you know, someone who works at a cell phone place. In fact, of like, they always have new cell phones, like when they see one that they like. And sometimes car dealerships are like that too. So let me know in the comments what you think of that. Anyway, I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines, and I'll see you in the next video.